Hello.
Hi.
Welcome to the next episode of the Brio in the Box podcast. What's going on?
New Year.
New Year.
January
same
7th.
us.
Yeah. It's that time of year again where I think a lot of people are going hard on the New Year's resolutions and they're like, this will be the year of me and the big changes and the planning and all that kind of stuff. And for us, it's always just a little bit more of a like, same us, you know,
Yeah.
we're just going to keep doing the thing.
I think that, I mean, people make fun of New Year's resolutions now. I think it's become a cliche thing to even do, but I think the New Year's just a time of self-reflection.
For sure.
What are you planning? How are you going to spend your time and your money and your limited resources?
Yeah.
What are going to be your priorities? What do you hope that things look like a year from now? It just makes that checkpoint where you reflect on the past year and think forward to the next one coming up. So
People often ask us if New Year's, we get a lot of new people coming in because they're like New Year's resolutions. And honestly, it's like we get some, of course, but not nearly what I think you would see in a sort of low cost, low commitment type of health club.
low service.
Because I think a lot of those people, it's a very like, okay, this is my year and I got to do it this year. And then it doesn't happen, you know? And I think the new year, new me sort of thing, it often comes with a little bit less commitment and a little bit less, you know, consistency than somebody that's just like any time through the year, they're like, you know what, I need to make a change, and they're just going to do it now, and they're going to start and they're going to stick with it. So I don't think we have nearly as much of that. This will be the one. And then they don't actually, we have most of our people just, they're here and they stay, and the new people that come into the fold, they enjoy it and they just, you know, keep coming back. So
Yeah, we mean it when we say home of the committed. We're fit forever. This is what we do. This isn't some, 30 days kick the tires, 90-day transformation. I just like, maybe I'm getting old and crusty. I just have no tolerance for that stuff anymore, No, this is just what we do forever. Like, this is just body maintenance. It's how you stay fit forever.
yeah, there's no quick fix. There's no 6-week boot camp to have abs, and like none of all of that is just snake oil. You know, if you want to be fit and healthy, you just pursue that for the rest of your life.
It's just, it becomes part of your identity. It's just who you are. And it's consistent with your values of how you live your life and care for yourself and bring a better version of you to the things that matter to you in your life.
Right.
So last year we started taking questions from the community, and I think that was fun. So we're going to keep that going. Interesting things that pop up, questions people ask us, looking for information, interesting side conversations that pop up that are kind of fun, keeps the community engaged in what we got going on here on the podcast. So on that kind of like thinking forward, somebody asked you, do we have a 5-year plan like for our business? That'd be pretty typical. You have a business plan, you have your 5-year plan in there. Do we have a 5-year plan?
Short answer is no.
No.
We, I think we learned long ago that the only thing you can count on is that every year is going to be a little bit different, you know? And if you get too hung up on this is the way it's going to be and counting on the future, I think you're going to get yourself into a bit of a hole. We've had some big swinging changes year to year as we've gone along, and we've always just prided ourselves on being flexible enough to adapt and change and continue to go with what's working and stop doing what's not working. And I think that's always really worked out well for us.
Yeah. I have an MBA, so I came from like the business school background, and become an entrepreneur and you start your business. You're like, yeah, I'm going to write this 5-year plan. And I think within
A year or two I went, oh, well, that's a joke.
Yeah.
Just like, you don't know what's going to happen. The knowledge you have at time 0 is nothing in reality of what you're going to have at time 5 years. And I've always felt like being too goal oriented really locks you in and doesn't leave you flexible enough to make the right decisions in the moment. So we've always prided ourselves on being pretty self-aware, pretty self-reflective. We have a way that we want our business to operate. And when it's moving in that direction, we do more of those things. And when it's not, we're pretty quick to make changes and abandon ship. Neither of us have an attachment to things continuing to be this way because that's the way they've always been done. I think we've both been pretty good about abandoning ship on bad ideas. And my God, we've had tons of bad ideas
For sure.
of things that we tried and didn't work out. But I think that's the fun of it. You have to be willing to try things. It is a form of risk taking. You have to have a high tolerance for risk. And then you have to have a thick skin for failures, or you'll never find the good stuff. You'll never find what works.
Yeah. And as part of that process, we're, like you said, we're very self-evaluative. We really spend a lot of time talking about our business and how things are going and trying to pursue excellence and always adapting. So it's not that we just coast. and have no thoughts or processes at all. We're always trying to make things better and improve. But there's definitely no concrete, by this date we'll do this and this date we'll do this, because how do you know those things are going to fall into place? You know, I'm a big fan of Stoicism philosophy. And in Stoicism, there's two categories. There's the category of things that you're in control of, and there's the category of things that you are not in control of. And the category of things you're in control of consists of one thing, and it's your reaction to what happens in the world, because everything else is beyond your control. Even your own body, who knows what's going to happen? You might get cancer, you might get hit by a car. So it's all about just how you react to things. And so for me, especially, if I try to get too caught up in my plans and my plans aren't going according to plan, I start to get annoyed or frustrated really easily. So for me, it's better to just relax on the plan and not worry about like, this has to happen by then. It's more about, what do I want to see happening in my life? And if I can be constantly working towards that, then I'm doing well. And I feel more at ease with that than specific deadlines and specific measurable outcomes that have to happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we agree, we get along great. I've never been a goal-oriented person.
Yeah.
And I know people assume that if you're into education or fitness, that you have goals. What are your fitness goals for this year? What's your education goals? What are your career goals? And I don't even like operating with any goals. I would consider myself a value-driven person. I have a certain set of values that I'm going to live with my life. I have certain things that are important to me and that I prioritize. And so I would consider myself more process-oriented than goal-oriented. I'm not so hung up on the outcome, but the process.
For sure.
So even like going back to school the last few years, the goal wasn't to get a master's degree in nutrition. The goal was to undertake the process of learning and understanding more about nutrition. And then the outcome is like, yeah, you get the diploma on the wall at the end, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was the journey of understanding and learning more. So, yeah. And not a big fan of goal setting.
Yeah.
Personally.
And I think that it's fine if people do want to set goals and work towards them. But the important thing that I think people need to remember is that, like you said, it's not check or no check. Did I do the thing? It's the work you're putting in leading up to that goal that's the important thing. So let's say somebody's like, well, I want to, make it to the CrossFit Games, which is a huge, ridiculous, crazy goal. If you train your ass off and get yourself so fit, you're crazy fit, you're so athletic, you've never been able to do these things before, you wake up the morning of a competition and you have the flu, like chances are you're fucked. You're not going to make it to the, and if your entire goal was based on, will I make it to the games or not? You're going to be super disappointed with that. But if you can take a step back and appreciate all of that fitness and all of that capability that you've built in that time and be like, okay, well, this didn't work out the way I wanted, but look what I've accomplished anyways. I think you can at least salvage some of those feelings. And again, if it's just like defined by this date or I'm disappointed, like who knows what's going to happen leading up to that or what future possibilities you're going to have. So I think flexibility with planning is just super important.
So let's think back to January of 2020, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Could we have predicted what would come in the ensuing 5 years from January of 2020?
Yeah.
Right. 2 months later, business is closed for 3 months. The pandemic hits, everything goes crazy. Like there was no way that any 5-year plan could have been ready for that. But we had a value system, a way of operating and our priorities that just allowed us to pivot hard when we needed to, when, something completely out of our control, like a global pandemic and government shutdowns and everything. So yeah, I think so far so good. So that approach to life has worked out great.
Yeah.
For me personally, for us, for the business,
Yeah.
I often, when I post things on social media, #continuous improvement.
Yeah.
Because that's the goal. We're never going to be done. The goal isn't to be done. There's no end. There's no finish line. The goal is the whole process. And it's the forever process of observing, challenging yourself to do a little better in some area, and then trying to do that.
Yep.
And then observe and then pick another area and try to do better over there. And always, having the self-awareness and self-reflection to just pick something and try to do a better job of it.
Yeah. I think our only real long-term goal is to just keep doing what we're doing. We like what we do and we enjoy the process and we like our community and we like sharing with the world and trying to make a difference and trying to be better people ourselves. And we just want to keep doing that. And whatever that looks like, it's fine. We'll figure it out. We'll adapt. We'll get creative and just try to make that process happen for as long as possible.
we just got to enjoy a nice break, nice 3-week holiday. And it's always reassuring to come back from a holiday and look forward to getting back to your life. I always feel like that's a really good feeling. I like my house. I like my family. I like my job. I'm always stoked to get back to the gym and get back to Brio. Like many people dread coming back from holidays and going back to work.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like that's a positive thing that every year get that little check-in, get a break from it, which is awesome. And then be happy to come back to it.
Yeah.
I love my life. We were talking with somebody about retirement the other day. And I was like, I'm never retiring. I was like, what would I do if I retired? I would do this. You know, people retire and open CrossFit gyms to do something that they like and find fulfilling and have a fun way to spend their time. I was like, what would I do? I would do this. I would do exactly what I do right now.
I mean, don't get me wrong. When we're in Maui, I love it. I love taking a break and I love the weather. And I get, 2 weeks in and I'm like, well, I miss my house and I miss my gym. I miss my people and I want to get back to that. So if we could just figure out a way to bring the Maui scenery and weather with us and have everything else, that would be perfect.
Teleport everyone.
Yeah.
Until then, we'll just have to visit.
I know.
Yeah.
But it's a nice break. It's good to get away and feel rejuvenated and, be able to come back and grind. Yeah. So not everybody's lucky enough to have our situation where they love what they do and they feel, trapped in their situations. And so there's been some discussions lately about making changes in your life and what's better. A lot of the time people say, well, you can't make big, huge changes. You have to do small incremental changes. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, maybe I'm just a contrarian asshole, but I'm like, bullshit. You don't have to make small incremental sustainable changes. You can make big ass changes at once if you want to. And sometimes the most important effectual decisions that you'll ever make are the big scary ones, right?
Yeah.
Like think of the things that people do. They change careers, they go back to school, they leave a toxic relationship, maybe a divorce is involved, they get sober, they start an exercise plan, like whatever the major changes you need to make for your health or your mental well-being. Those things, the most effective ones often are big changes all at once. So again, that thing that people tend to parrot, like, you can't make big drastic changes all at once. It won't stick. You have to make small incremental changes or it won't work. Like bullshit. No, you don't. You can make big ass changes all at once. And often that'll be the best thing for you.
For sure. Yeah. I think we made a huge change because we both just quit our jobs and moved to Saskatoon and opened a gym, and it worked out really well. Yeah. We were willing to take the risk and it panned out. I think big changes do come with bigger risk though. You have way more chance to fall flat on your face and hurt hard. Whereas with those small, careful changes, maybe you just get a little bite and then you're like, oh, hang on, back off. And you're just not opening yourself up to as much risk. But counter argument, I think that there are certain things for certain people that if you do a huge change too quickly, you're going to feel overwhelmed. And you might swing back hard the other way, right? Often when people want to change, let's say their nutrition, right? And like, I remember being a young idiot before I met you and knowing that I needed to lean out and lose a little bit of extra weight I had on my body. And I was like, okay, the only food I'm going to eat is broccoli and chicken. And I did that for a few days, which was a pretty drastic change, going from eating restaurant food all the time to chicken and broccoli. And that lasted for like 3 or 4 days before I was like, fuck this. And I probably had a pizza or something, right? Yeah. So it was too drastic, too big. If I would have just been like, okay, I need to cut out the pop or I need to cut out whatever this first, I probably would have had a little bit more success easing into it instead of going full send and having no flavor in my food whatsoever. The most bland stuff you can eat.
Like not all plans are good plans. For sure. And if you try a plan and it's obviously not working, then you need to change the plan, right? But I think maybe if changes are too small for people, they don't see any results, so they don't see any positive reinforcement. They're like, ugh, this isn't even worth it. Like if all you do is give up pop, but you otherwise continue to drink alcohol and eat processed food, and then you just don't really see any changes in your health, you're like, meh. Like,
you got to be real patient to do small changes because, like you just said, it's very slow to make a difference, especially when things are real bad. If you're just full candy, full pop, full dessert all the time type of person, and you're like, okay, for 2 weeks, I'm just not going to drink pop anymore. You might not see any difference whatsoever. And then the next 2 weeks, you have to cut out this and then this and then this and then this. And then 8 weeks have gone by and it's still bad enough that you haven't had any significant change whatsoever. Like that's a fairly demotivating thing. Whereas if you're like, okay, I'm going to go full keto, or I'm going to go full animal based, or I'm going to go full whatever, that 8 weeks, even though it'll be harder to do, you're going to have a significant change at the end of that time. So I guess you have to manage yourself and know, like, am I super patient and willing to slowly chip away at this thing? Or do I need to just pull off the Band-Aid and tough it out?
Then, okay, you just made me think. Do you think it's fair to say that big drastic changes are necessary when things are really bad?
Yeah.
Addiction, health is really bad, toxic relationship, career you hate. When those things are really bad, it requires like a big change that everything better is on the other side of worse first.
For sure.
You're going to feel much worse before things get better, but you know that better is on the other side. Whereas small incremental changes can take something from good to great.
Yeah.
You're like already pretty good with your eating habits, and you're like, hey, what if we, switched out this for that, this ingredient for that? You'd buy this sour cream instead of this one because it doesn't have a bunch of gums in it. Small incremental changes that take you from good to great.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where those ones. But I think when you're in a big bad situation, you need like a big plan, big changes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the drastic changes are necessary for especially the super life altering bad habits. But I think the small consistent changes can be beneficial as well. I think everybody knows, coming back from a holiday, if you haven't eaten well and you haven't worked out in like 2 or 3 weeks, we all know that first workout back is going to be a real kick in the teeth.
Are you talking about me? I feel like you're talking about me.
We did okay. We worked out a pretty good amount in Maui, but not as much as since we lost our CrossFit gym. But for a lot of people, they'll go on the long holiday, they'll come back and they're like, oh God, here we go. But at some point you just have to do it. You know, you have to just pull the pin and fucking throw the grenade and blow yourself up and come back the next day being like, yep, I earned that. That's not necessarily a big change, but it's one that people avoid. They try to put it off. Maybe, well, I need to catch up on my work for a few days. It's like, no, you just got to jump in and do it.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to throw at you.
People say you have to just find an exercise program that you like.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Sometimes I really don't like CrossFit, but I know it's good for me.
Yeah.
And so I do it anyways. I'm not a strong squatter. We've talked about this in the past. And I would love to find a legitimate reason to convince myself that I don't have to squat. But the reality is I have to squat. You just have to do the stuff that's hard. And so I would strongly disagree that, sure, if you want to find something that you love, good for you. I hope you enjoy it, but it will never be as effective as doing the things that you suck at and the things that you know you need to work on.
Mm-hmm. And I think assuming your goal is health and longevity, health being work capacity across the years of your life, your ability to just do the things you want to do to participate in life the way you want to, fitness, then it's not going to work to say you just have to find a style of exercise that you like. Probably Zumba is really fun and I would probably like it. It's not going to meet my goals for health and longevity across the lifespan. It's just not. So it's not that you have to find an exercise program that you like. It's that you have to learn to like the things that you need to do to meet your goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because certainly it would be better if you like squatting and sprinting and jumping and climbing and pulling and pushing and all the things that you need to do to meet those health goals, right? Yeah. Certainly. I think CrossFit's fun most of the time.
Yeah. I could absolutely supplement bench pressing for squatting and have a much better time.
Yeah.
And I might even look okay and I might even feel okay, but there will come a time down the road where all of a sudden I can't get myself out of a chair. And all of a sudden I'll be like, oh no, turns out I needed to be doing that thing. And we've had numerous people come to us that consider themselves to be in pretty good shape, quote unquote, pretty good shape. And, I work out pretty good and I just want to try something different. And the unfortunate thing for those people is they don't even know what they've been missing. And so they come in and they try some of these movements that we do and some of these workouts. And it's like deer in the headlights where they're like, holy shit, I thought I was fit and I am not. Hopefully they have that realization.
I mean, I had that realization with my first exposure to CrossFit in 2008 of exactly that. Oh my God, I thought I was fit. What happened?
Yeah.
This workout mowed me over. And we've learned over the years now that people that come to us self-reporting that they're pretty fit, that's a red flag that Probably not. Honestly, those are probably some of the people that are going to struggle the most with constantly varied functional movement executed at relatively high intensity.
And I think the reason for that is because, again, they're caught off guard when they're not instantly good at it. You know, if you're humble and you're like, I know I got some work to do, you're prepared mentally for the difficulty of what we're about to do. Whereas if you come in guns a-blazing, you're like, yeah, I'm going to crush this. I'm pretty fit. It's going to rock your world. And you're going to be like, what the hell happened? Like, how is this possible? So there's definitely something about approaching it with, there's always room to learn and improve and get better. And I think if you can do that in most things in life, you'll be way more successful.
Many people, I think, have the perspective that if they just tick certain boxes, that they'll be owed the supposed results.
Right.
And they're not really reflecting on their own, like, look in the mirror kind of thing. What's the quote from 1984? The party asks you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears, something like that, where maybe they don't have a good understanding of what they should be assessing in themselves. What would be the metric? So people have really simple ones like the scale. Well, that's kind of one. I think it's important that you weigh yourself regularly, but it only gives you one little sliver of information. There's lots of other performance markers, your grip strength, your walking speed, your deadlift are all biomarkers of your health, as are your HbA1c and your insulin and your liver enzymes and all those doctor numbers that you go get. So I think many people are not being self-reflective enough to know I'm on a plan that's not delivering the results that I want. They just think if I eat this smoothie, or if I eat these whole grains like the government told me, or if I show up to this, 60-minute cardio class, like somebody said 60 minutes of exercise is important, that I'll be owed health in the future. And it doesn't work like that. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of really bad information, really misleading stuff out there that's always the stuff that makes me mad / breaks my heart. It makes me sad and mad at the same time, is people that were willing to put in the effort to build themselves a better future, to build health in the future. And then they just
happen upon such terrible information that doesn't get them what they wanted for themselves and they were willing to work for. They just end up on a crappy exercise program and a crappy diet. And then they waste their time with things that aren't effective, with things that don't deliver the future that they want. And that always just really bums me out, because what you don't get back is time.
Yeah. I think the statement, you need 60 minutes of exercise, is the fitness equivalent of you need 2,000 calories every day, because not all calories are created equal. Yeah. Not all exercise programs are created equal. And if you want to truly maximize your results and your longevity and your good feelings, you need to make the best use of that time. Just like you need to use the best foods to get your 2,000 calories.
Yeah. Okay. So longevity makes me think of, you were watching something recently about Brian Johnson, the billionaire guy that's trying to live forever.
Yeah. He's not actually a billionaire. I learned in this podcast.
Spent all his money on vampire
So he was in a tech and sold his company for like $300 million or something, or his amount was $300 million. So very wealthy guy. And he decided in his 40s that he wanted to basically just self-experiment and try to be the first person to live to 150. And so he apparently spends like $1 million a year on his whole routine. And he's got a whole team of people working with him. And he does anything you can think of under the sun to supposedly help with longevity. So he does all kinds of laser treatments, and he eats the same meal type of thing all day. He does the exact same exercise program every day that, based on his science, shows the most muscle activation, and has the exact same sleep schedule and all this stuff. But the thing that always caught me off guard the most with him is that he takes like 100 different supplements every day. So they lined up all the different pill bottles and everything that he takes. And it's crazy. It's insane. And so when he first started doing this, there was nothing about sales with him. He was just doing it for self-experimentation. Now, of course, he's starting to sell supplements, right? And, he says that his goal is to help people fill the gaps in their nutrition from food, which I get it. That's what supplementing is supposed to be for. But then he went on to talk about his big goal is to make it so that people don't actually even need food anymore, where you can just order their daily plan and it'll give you everything that you need in a soup, a protein shake, and some pills. And like, that's all you need in the day. And it's just mind-blowing that a guy who's apparently from a very scientific mind and all about the reasoning behind it can't understand that that's probably not your best option, you know?
Yeah.
For most people, you need to eat food, not even just for nutrition, but for your own satiety. I can't imagine waking up every day and having the same shake and then the same sort of soup and then take a bunch of pills and be like, well, I'm good for the day.
That just sounds like some kind of horrible dystopian future.
Yeah. And it all stems from this guy who has the mentality to be able to do that type of thing because he's been doing it for a few years now. And
very regimented.
Very regimented. He follows the exact same thing every single day. And if that works for a few people, cool. But I just don't see most people enjoying that process.
And I just do not agree that you can reverse engineer and create human health from pills and powders. You just cannot. We're not that good. Nor why would you even want to? We can see the same problem that, grocery shopping and cooking for yourself is time consuming. I'm not even going to concede that it's hard. I don't think it's hard. It just takes effort and it takes time.
Yeah.
Which is maybe in short supply for people. It's not that hard to cook your own food.
Yeah.
But that's like a deep part of being a human being. We're the only animal whose digestive system extends out of our body. And the fact that we process and, ferment and apply heat and grind, and we pre-digest some of our food by cooking. It's literally what made us human, allowing us to unlock more nutrition from the environment and grow these big human brains. And then we get dumb enough to think that we're going to recreate any of that from pills and powders. Absolutely not. You could deconstruct a banana into every little gram and molecule of what it's made up of. And if I gave you all those ingredients, you can't make a banana.
Yeah.
You can't reverse engineer. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Absolutely.
And I've had a conversation related to that a few times lately. A friend of mine, while we were away on holidays, was like, I think I'm going to start taking this complete amino acid, some supplement that she named. Because, it's really important to get all the amino acids to build muscle. And I was like, why wouldn't you just eat meat? And she was like, oh. And I was like, you're never going to create human health from pills and powders. She's like, oh. And I know it's an expensive one. So it's the marketing comes all around, sounds all fancy. Like, yeah, you must meet all your complete amino acid meat. I agree. But you don't need to pay 5 times as much. You could just eat some beef. You could just eat meat and you would get not only all the amino acids, but also all the vitamins and minerals that come in that whole food source in the digestible form that would serve you much better for less cost.
Yeah.
And this is like the least sexy nutrition advice to have. Who am I? What am I telling you? Read the ingredients, eat real food. Yeah. I have nothing to sell you. You're not subscribing to my app, or I'm not trying to do macro counting, nutrition consulting for $200 a month. I don't do any of that because guess what I'm going to tell you? Read the ingredients, eat real food, get enough protein from real food from animal sources, and carry on. And the lady, bless her heart, said, can't I just take a pill for all of this? And I was like, no.
Fortunately, no.
You're never going to get me to agree to that. You're never going to get me to agree that a pill or powder is a better source of nutrition than a real whole food.
Yeah.
If there are certain missing elements, like you said, a supplement is called that because it's literally supplemental. It can fill some gaps that exist in maybe like the soil that we grow food in these days is just not as nutritious. So we have to supplement certain things, or I don't have access to wild salmon, or it's not in my budget, or I can't afford grass-fed beef, or whatever. There's strategic things you can fill to take yourself from, 90% of the way there to 100.
Right.
But you can't take yourself from 0 to 100% of meeting your nutritional needs with supplements. It just does not work.
And even this guy was talking about his whole plan. Him and his team, they reevaluate and make changes every couple of weeks. So they're able to really analyze everything in his body and make changes based on what's happening. So if you're buying a 6-week supply of whatever supplements they're currently recommending and going with that, and then they find some new evidence that shows that things have changed and we need to change these things. It's like, well, now you're committed to these 6 weeks of things that aren't as effective as they should be. We're constantly finding new combinations of how supplements interact with each other. And if you take this without this, it's not going to work. Or if you take this with this, it's going to block the effectiveness of whatever. So it's really hard to just take a whole bunch of, like you said, pills and powders, mash them together and be like, this is as good as food.
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, the success with exogenous pharmaceuticals or supplements or whatever is really not great. I'll be honest, as someone that comes from the nutrition background, almost all supplements show a net harm reduction of life expectancy.
Yeah.
Vitamin A, vitamin E, high dose vitamin C, like many of these things. Overall, the all-cause mortality goes up and not down from taking these things outside of very specific situations.
And we don't really know why that is too, right? That's not something we've just figured out and we can answer. Isn't it just sort of like, there's been some studies that have shown that people that take vitamins are less likely to live longer than people that don't take vitamins, but we don't know why.
Oh, like epidemiology.
Yeah.
We do know why. So in an observational study, it will show taking a multivitamin every day is associated with longevity. But then you go to any randomized control trial and it has no effect whatsoever, sometimes a net negative effect. That's called the healthy user bias.
Right.
Which, if you want to understand why nutrition science is such a hot mess of garbage,
That would be a very key concept to understand. You have to ask yourself, what are you actually measuring in an observational study? It's not that you're measuring the effect of taking a vitamin every day. It's that you're capturing a proxy for the type of person that's likely to remember to take a vitamin every day.
Right.
Well, what do we know about those people? Well, they have the budget to be able to do that. So probably higher socioeconomic status. They have a certain personality characteristic of diligence to remember to take it every day. They have an interest in their health, or they wouldn't pay money and take the vitamins. They also think that it's going to make them healthier, so you have a placebo effect built in there. So there's some things you can correct for, age, socioeconomic status, body weight, activity levels, whatever. But then there's a whole bunch of behaviors that you can't correct for in the data. Are they more likely to prioritize sleep? Are they more likely to go to a doctor earlier when they have a health problem because they care about their health? Are they more likely to make healthy food choices or spend more time in the sun, or a variety of other behaviors that go into being the type of person that prioritizes your health? So the difference that you see between epidemiology, observational research, and actually randomized controlled trials can be wildly different because you're not measuring or seeing the effect of what you think you're seeing the effect of.
Right. So at the end of the day, get it from the food.
Yes.
Supplement should be the caulking that fills the seams that you're missing, just like a little bit here and there. But I'm not going to build a floorboard out of caulking.
Yes, that's a very good analogy. Exactly.
So speaking of supplements, because this one, it comes in waves. It'll be all over the news for a while, and then it'll disappear and then back in and back out. Creatine, specifically for women.
Yeah, and this was another conversation that stemmed from the gym. Middle age, between 40 and 50, should you take creatine? I feel like that's been the current cycle of things in the media. It is good for cognitive function. It's good for bone health. It's good for muscle health. It's actually good for holding water in the muscles, which is part of hydration. So if you take an electrolyte supplement, the creatine together can help hold water in the muscle. So it's definitely effective and it's pretty safe. Like we've talked at one time, somebody asked me, can my teenage son take it? Like, can kids take creatine? For sure. It's pretty safe. But also, you shouldn't need to take creatine. You get creatine from food. You get it from red meat. It's part of making energy, right? So it's part of recycling ATP into being able to capture energy in the little cellular batteries, basically. You should be meeting creatine needs from between 16 and 32 ounces of red meat a day, which is like a normal, natural human diet. If for some reason you avoid red meat or animal foods or something, then the second, very distant second place would be to take creatine. There's research showing that in vegans, you can supplement creatine and increase their performance on an IQ test by 20 points, which is not a reflection of the effectiveness of creatine. It's a reflection of the dangers of a diet that removes animal foods, because when they supplement creatine in people that eat an omnivorous diet, there's no effect on IQ. So if you take creatine and you notice a cognitive benefit, your diet is shit. You need to address your diet. That's not good.
Right.
So don't rely on a supplement to meet a certain need. You should be meeting it from food first. And then, if you want to add it as a little bonus effect to try to hydrate yourself a little better, it's like fine. But you should not be at the point where you need creatine to make your brain function properly. You should be meeting that need through food.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, that is a lot of meat to consume. And if that is problematic for you, there is benefit to taking powders and stuff. Is there ones that are better than others, or what do you think?
No, they almost all come from the same source. So just a straight up creatine monohydrate. There's some of them are like try to zhuzh it up with different formulas or fancy marketing, and mine costs 3 times as much as the other. Nah, you really don't have to fall for any of that. You could just buy a basic
creatine monohydrate type of stuff.
And again, back to people are like, oh, but eating, that much protein or that much red meat is like hard. I'm like, so that just doesn't invoke a lot of empathy from me, because I'm like, I don't know, is it? It just takes some effort. It takes some time to do some meal prep, but you feel so good. I don't agree that those things are hard, therefore you don't have to do it. We had a whole discussion about this last time that like, that doesn't get you off the hook with me. That like, I don't care that you find it hard. You still need to do it. It's just like,
I don't care that you hate squats. You still need to do them. You know, it's like,
I was just going to say, it's just like exercises that you don't like. You're only going to get so far doing the things that you want to do and living a pretty princess life. Sometimes you need to grind. Sometimes you need to do the tough thing.
You got to do the hard things. People like to bring things that they see on the internet to me and go like, what is this? Like, I'm kind of the filter. Is this real? Is this bullshit? So like, what's the filter for how do we know? Is this a person I should listen to, or is this someone that doesn't know what they're talking about? And when it comes to nutrition, I will say one of the filters is if anybody talks about the importance of a nutrient and doesn't talk about the food source first, that's not a person you should listen to. Mm-hmm. I listened to one of the more frustrating interviews I've ever listened to in my life, but I tried to tough it out to give this lady the benefit of the doubt. It's Dr. Stacey Sims, watched her on a podcast. And she like kind of gets it. She's got like one little piece of the puzzle and she'll be like, creatine is super important. And she'll list 5 reasons it's important. And then go, you should take it in a powder. And then another point, it was iron. She lists all these reasons why iron is super important for women, you know, red blood cells and, you know, cognitive function, all these things. And then you should take it in a supplement. And then, like, oh, omega-3s are like really important. You should take them in a capsule. I was like, girl, eat food. All those things come in food and they come in animal food. So eat red meat and salmon and all these. I was like, this lady holds herself out as a nutrition expert. And I think at one point in an almost 3-hour interview, she mentioned eating a hard-boiled egg.
Right.
And other than that, there was almost no mention of real food. I was like, this isn't a nutrition expert. This is like a supplement expert.
Yeah.
Which is the lab scientists or kind of the PhDs get hung up on that because the way that a randomized controlled trial has to be performed is there has to be one variable. So then it has to be isolated out of its real food matrix, or it has confounding variables. If I just have more people eat red meat, I don't know if their athletic performance goes up because it had more creatine, because it had more protein, because they got more iron, because it had more zinc. There's too many variables. So you have to isolate one of those and give it in a pill, but therefore that creates confounding variables because you gave people something outside of its natural context. So, but sometimes they like forget about the real world and about real food, and they get too hung up on single isolated variable items.
And I think for her specifically, she doesn't eat meat because of her own issues from childhood or whatever.
She talked about that on Huberman. She said she doesn't eat.
Yeah. And so I think when you come from that sort of situation where you have a preconceived, I'm not going to do this because, you start to find other ways to try to still do the same thing without giving up your value of like, I'm not going to eat meat for emotional reasons. And so I think with those types of people, you're not getting the best information because they're coming from a place of their own ideal. Yeah. Their own biases, their own ideals, their own values. And they're trying to subconsciously perhaps make other people do the same, you know? So you have to kind of consider when you're listening to people like, what's this person's background? What's this person doing? How is it working out for them? Yeah. There's nothing more frustrating than seeing a health minister or whatever who's morbidly obese and giving health advice and be like, what? And then you also need to remember, like, is this person selling me anything? You know, are they like, you need creatine, buy this one, you know?
Like, what lens are they viewing the world through? To be fair to her, she's also an exercise scientist. She's been talking lots about menopause and women's health, which is why I forced myself to tough out listening to that whole interview, because that's been a hot topic of conversation in the gym. And she did have some things right. You do need to lay off of the long, slow endurance oxidative pathway training. Creates too much oxidative stress, ruins your hormonal health. And that's the, you know, spin classes, the running, the Orange Theory. She even said, she's like, I'm openly critical of Orange Theory type fitness, just that long, grindy, boot campy type stuff. She's like, you need to sprint and you need to lift heavy things. You need to do resistance training and sprinting. And I was like, oh, well, that sounds like CrossFit. And I was like, yes, I agree.
Yeah.
She was talking about pre and during and postmenopausal women. So through that change of life, these are the things you need to stick to. I've had several women ask me like, should I change my exercise program? Should I move to something lower intensity? Absolutely not. More long, slow intensity stuff is the complete opposite of what you want to preserve and steward your health through that important female change of life. You need to care for your muscle mass and bone density like it's the most valuable thing you own. And it really is. And that's resistance training and also high impact things like jumping and power movements. And then you need to preserve your high end VO2 max, your sprinting capacity. And then you just need to lay off the extra stress on the system. Lots of general daily movement like walking and being out in the nature and out in the sun. Awesome. High intensity stuff, sprinting and weightlifting, awesome. What you need to stay out of is that cardio no man's land in the middle.
Right. So let's say somebody has intentions to go. It's Tuesday, it's our squat day and sprint day. They just feel like hot garbage that day. Is it better for them to like go for a run instead, or do they still come in and do what they can, even though they're not going to be able to do it very well? What do you think is better?
I really encourage people to be self-aware of why they feel that way. And there's many aspects of your life that you need to be conscious of and paying some attention to. And I'm a big fan of tracking, right? It helps create honesty with yourself. Sleep, stress, like emotional stress, chronic stress, call it, your nutrition, your alcohol intake, the other, demands you have on your time, that kind of stuff. So if you're like, I've been working shift work, or I stayed up late, or I had a lot of alcohol this weekend, or things that have depleted your batteries, whatever happened, or my diet's been shitty and I feel like crap, probably it's just a rest day. And that's fine. But if you're like, I feel like crap every day and I don't have the energy to exercise ever, then you need to address your lifestyle factors.
Sure.
And the first thing to go or to change shouldn't be your exercise program.
Right.
It should be eat better, stop drinking so much, prioritize your sleep, go outside more. Like, those are the things you should be looking to make major changes in. It shouldn't ever be, well, I should quit CrossFit.
Yeah.
No.
And you and I differ slightly on our opinion about working out and feeling good, because traditionally exercise has been your thing that makes you feel good about yourself and that you do it because you love it. Whereas I am less enthusiastic about the feeling I get from CrossFit, and it's more, I do it because I need to do it and it's good for me. So for me, if I'm not feeling great, I'll often feel better after I work out because I'm like, okay, I was feeling like shit, but I did it anyways, even if it wasn't my best work. Whereas for you, it's a little bit more like you feel worse afterwards because this is normally your happy thing and I'm not happy and I feel like shit and it's not going well. So I think you can be sort of self-evaluative and look at your week and be like, okay, I feel like hot garbage today, but I can work out tomorrow instead. Cool. That's an easy swap. Go for that.
Yeah.
But if your only day is Tuesday, Thursday, whatever, and you're starting to interfere with those days, for me personally, I feel like you'll be better off coming in and doing what you can versus not working out at all. And that might mean substituting, pressing for squatting because your knees are a little sore or whatever, or you're having hot flashes. And so you're going to have to take some breaks and cool down, or you're going to have to situate yourself right underneath a fan or whatever it might be. So I think you just have to be really aware of, what am I giving up by not going? And what can I do to make the best of the situation?
Yeah, make good choices. And we talked in a previous podcast about what's really meant by intensity and how much intensity do you need. It doesn't mean the expectation is you come in and blast yourself into the brick wall at 100% intensity every day. Anything above a 7 out of 10 is considered high intensity. And keep in mind, when we in the CrossFit world of exercise say high intensity, we're talking relative to what the whole world of exercise was doing prior to Greg's world-changing methodology, which was like on the elliptical for an hour at like a 3 or 4 out of 10. And that's the stuff we're trying to get away from. You just don't need to do any of that middle zone.
Yeah.
If you feel like crap, or you're getting sick, or you're stressed out, or you have bad sleep, or whatever, you've been eating crappy, or you drank too much, maybe you go for a walk and you do things at a 1 or 2, right? The low intensity stuff is awesome, especially time outside in nature. Really recharging kind of thing. What you want to do is a band in the middle zone, and then you want to prioritize 7 and above. A 7 out of 10 is very different than a 10 out of 10. I save the 10 out of 10s for like a few times a year, honestly.
No. And I mean, back to what you said, like, I think about exercise in the reverse. I consider my fitness my expression of my freedom in my body, and I really love that. And if I don't feel free to my full capabilities in my body, it makes me really mad. So if I feel bad and I work out, I'll almost always feel worse.
Yeah.
And so then I mostly won't work out when I feel bad. I take lots of rest days, but then I will set up my life to give myself the privilege of feeling good in my workouts. That's my treat. I want to feel good in my workouts. So I'm going to go to sleep, feed myself well, not have a drink, on a Wednesday night when I could, or things like that, to set myself up to have a good workout. So,
Yeah.
And that's not saying that it has to be that way for everybody. I know many people are like, oh, working out is the thing that changes my mood, makes me feel better. And that's awesome. Honestly, I wish I was like that, that if I was in a bad mood, a workout would make me feel better. It just makes me feel more mad.
Yeah.
But then I have other ways of dealing with when I feel that way. Maybe is like, go outside, go for a walk, get a good sleep, eat a good meal, drink water, like other ways of helping myself out of that.
For sure.
That makes sense.
So let's swing back to exercise programs, because we're encouraging people to sprint and lift heavy. And so people often inquire like, well, what about like a 20-minute AMRAP that we do as part of our program? We'll do like a 30-minute AMRAP sometimes. I think the thing that people need to understand is that even when we're doing our longer workouts, for the vast majority of people, there's still intervals. They're just self-directed intervals, right? There's a few freaks out there that can just hammer it for 20 minutes nonstop, and those people are very good athletes. But for the average person, if we're doing a workout with, let's say, 30 wall balls at a time, and it's a 20-minute AMRAP, by no means are you going to be going nonstop that hold. You might do 15 wall balls, which takes about 30 seconds, and then stand there shaking it out, being like, oh, fuck, for like 10 or 15 seconds. You've just created an interval for yourself, which means you're basically pushing hard, taking a break, pushing hard, taking a break, which is sprinting, right? Yeah. So the things we need to be careful with, the things that I think you're trying to suggest avoiding are when you go 30 minutes or longer, nonstop, but slow, right? You're just that sort of light jog where it's like your body is just elevated enough that it's in a sort of like high stress situation and you don't really have any time to recover until you're done.
Yeah, between if we're going on just like a rate of perceived exertion from 1 to 10, 0 to 10, we work in CrossFit at 7 and above, which is still a long range. I love things in the 1 and 2s, the general daily movement time outside. What I would skip is things in the 3 to 6.
Mm-hmm. So when we have people ask us about running training and stuff, because they'll be like, well, should I run 5K every day? Or I'm like, no, dude, instead of running 5K at a slow pace, like sprint, run fast until you have to slow down and then stop. Yeah, and then rest and then repeat.
1 minute on, 1 minute off intervals for 20 or 30 minutes. Awesome.
Because the goal with training and trying to get better for a race is you're trying to be able to maintain a fast pace for longer. And if you only ever train your slow pace, you're never going to get faster. You're just going to continue. You're going to be able to do that same slow pace for longer. But if you want to actually run at a certain speed, you need to train at that speed.
And I think when we have specific performance goals, running a marathon, doing a powerlifting meet, anything that bridges us into the world of specialization, those things are fine, but they start to become at odds with the goal of health and longevity. Yeah. So it's perfectly fine to engage in something because it's fun and it's a challenge and you want to do it and you want to check the box on your bucket list. That's fine. But the type of training and that it will take to achieve that starts to diverge from health and fitness, which whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've done those. You've done those. Like there's some fun things once in a while,
Yeah.
Okay. So let me tell you about my bone density.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of aging and things that work and making the right choices, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say pretty confidently, CrossFit definitely works. And let me tell you why. I had a bone density scan when I was 35 years old. So 6 years ago. I recently had one last Friday at 41 years old. So let me tell you about the difference, the change in the ensuing 6 years. When normally above 35, people would consider things starting to decline. So my T-score, which is a score that ranks you against a reference healthy 30-year-old female, 6 years ago was a 2.2, now it's a 2.7. So my bone density went up. My Z-score, which is relative to your age group, which isn't fair because now I'm in the 40-year-old age group, relative to all 40-year-old females, I am 3.1 standard deviations above the norm for my age. So that's like 99.8% of women my age have bone density lower than mine.
Boom.
Suck it. I weighed exactly the same within 100 grams. What are the freaking chances of that? 60.5 and 60.6. So I weigh exactly the same. But my body fat percentage went down quite a bit. I was 18% body fat before, 18.5, and now I'm 14.7% body fat. That's pretty low for a female. And even in the chart, it says exceptionally lean, borderline low percentage of body fat.
Yeah.
But my lean mass went up. So I got more muscles, I got more bones, and I got less body fat between 35 and 41 years old. That's pretty freaking dope. Pretty happy with that.
And we should also mention that that's CrossFit, but that's the full CrossFit. That's the nutrition at the bottom as well, right? The full pyramid.
Yeah. So I had a little over 11 kilograms of fat before. Now I have 8.7. So yeah, that's why my percentage of body fat dropped down. Muscle mass and bone density went up, even though I weigh exactly the same. So yeah, I feel like I was like, hell yes, CrossFit works. And I'll tell you what I've been doing. Constantly varied functional movement executed at my relatively high intensity.
Yeah.
I prioritized mechanics first, good consistency, and then intensity. I'm a good mover. I take rest days often. You know, the CrossFit standard was prioritize one workout a day, take a rest day every third or fourth day. I rest actually more than that. So I don't train a lot of volume. I prioritize mechanics and intensity. I eat really well, really consistently. I had switched to a ketogenic diet after Dash was born, so I would have been 33. So I was 2 years into doing keto when I first did this bone density scan. And then now I'm almost 8 years into it. But also prioritizing real whole foods, aiming to get a gram per pound of protein per body weight from animal source foods. I will on occasion like throw a scoop of protein powder into my yogurt or some collagen into my coffee and that kind of stuff. So it's like that's the 5 or 10% that supplements on top, but that's not the bulk of my diet.
Yeah.
I prioritize sleep. I don't drink a ton. I'm not a non-drinker, but I don't drink a ton of alcohol. And it's just, I've just been doing that forever.
Consistently.
Since I was 24. So CrossFit works.
Absolutely.
And I'm very confident that, you know, when I started CrossFit, I was 24, so like 2008, early 2000s. And CrossFit was new and people were very critical of it. And they're like, that's dangerous. That's stupid. That'll never work. So I kind of fucked around, you know, you're like fucked around with something that people were like, oh, I don't know about. And now I'm finding out.
Yeah.
17 years later, I'm finding out, oh, it was actually a great idea. And I'm super grateful that I found CrossFit when I did. And I've been eating and training the way I have for basically the majority of my adult life. Because man, to arrive at 41 with bone density better than almost anybody my age you would meet and 14% body fat with no effort, it feels like whatsoever. I just train with my buddies and eat food I like. That's pretty awesome. I felt really happy about that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the sickness, wellness, fitness curve, the whole point of this, like people are like, well, why do you need such dense bones? You're so prepared that you can have such a tremendous drop before you get back down to normal, which basically means for the rest of your life, you're not going to have to worry about osteoporosis, right? Like you're basically setting your future self up for success with this. Same with your body fat percentage. It's quite low right now, but you're still middle age, if that even. You're probably going to live over 100. So that just means that as you get older and things start to go and soften up a little bit, you're just that much more prepared. So it's not that you've created a way, you've found a way to get yourself to that fitness level where you have to drop down to wellness before you ever get sick.
I have a huge buffer.
A huge buffer. And chances are that with such a huge buffer, you're never going to make it to sickness. You're just going to get old and eventually die, but you'll probably do well the whole time.
Yeah. I have a huge balance in my health savings account, if you want to think of that way. Big savings. But okay, so back to the, like, I'm not exceptionally lean. Let's talk about the fallacy of percentages. So 14.7% body fat is low for a female, super low. But this is in kilograms, that's 19 pounds of fat. That's a normal amount of body fat for a female. And in fact, my BMI puts me slightly into the overweight category just by like 0.9, I think. So it's funny that you get this report. And on the one side, it says like, you know, common for an athlete, but exceptionally low. And then 2 pages later, it says overweight.
Yeah.
You're like, well, it's not that I have very low body fat. I have a normal amount of body fat. I have a high amount of muscle mass and bone density that makes my whole body weigh more.
Right.
So as a percentage, my fat is just a smaller percentage of that body weight. So
yeah.
Don't let me sell myself like I'm some bodybuilder.
Yeah, by no means is it like a dangerous level of body fat percentage or anything. It's just relative to, like you said, your muscle mass. You have more muscles than the average girl and your bones are dense as fuck. So you've just got more weight there.
I believe you have referred to this as dummy thick.
Dummy thick, yeah. Now people are going to ask, what are my numbers? And I don't have them because I haven't done this yet. I'm not as much of a nerd as you, so maybe one day I'll have another one. I did have a DEXA scan when you had your first one. We went to Edmonton and did it, and I don't even remember any of my numbers. I didn't keep my forms for 6 years like you do.
Older.
Yeah.
So yes, many people ask, where can you do this? Just Google DEXA scan Saskatoon. The College of Kinesiology has a DEXA machine that they'll let you go do a scan for like $100. So they've just opened it up to the public. It's awesome. It takes like 10 minutes. You just lay on a table and the x-ray thing scans you. They give you the little printout. Highly recommend anybody go do it, especially women. The reason I care more than you do is because menopause, which is coming in my future at some point, presents such a big challenge to maintaining bone density due to the hormonal changes that happen. So I just want to make sure that my bones are good, and I want to make sure early so that I would have time to correct and make changes if I needed to. So for women especially, but for everybody, you should have a baseline. Like I had one in my 30s. I think you should do that when you're young, you know, under 35, you should have a baseline. And then maybe every 5 years, just check on it. You want to make sure that the trajectory is the right one. And have the time to adjust should you need to make any diet or lifestyle changes.
And having this information is super helpful because it's as honest as can be, right? You don't get to cheat these numbers. This is the gold standard as far as measuring your body. So swinging back to the like doing the exercise you want and eating the foods that you like and everything, having these numbers makes you face whether it's working or not, right? If you're, well, I think I'm eating pretty well and I like what I eat and I don't really want to change that. But then you go and you get one of these and it's like, oh shit, you've got some major medical issues. You have to face the fact that what you're currently doing isn't working for you.
Yeah.
Where if you avoid these types of things and just carry on being like, well, I think I've figured out what I enjoy and what works for me, so I'm just going to keep doing this. You're just blindly going through it. And one day something's going to happen.
Yeah. And like I kind of said, if you feel like you're owed results based on certain choices, it's not necessarily the case, right? Like if you're well, I did my cardio and I ate my salads and I, you know, whatever, ate my smoothies. And then you go have a bone density scan and you're like, I'm not even 50 and I have osteoporosis. Like what in the world? You know, you need to have those results. And unfortunately what most people do when the bad results or time progresses forward and things don't work out the way they hope, they go, well, I guess it's just genetics, or I guess it's just aging. And you're like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
Right? The right lifestyle, the right fitness program, which is a combo of the exercise you do and the food you eat creates your fitness, will give you the results. Almost guaranteed it will give you the results that you want. Muscle mass, bone density, physical function, good cognitive function to carry on through life through all the years that you get.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, your mom turned around her osteoporosis in her 50s and is now in her 70s and has a better skeleton than she did back when she was in her 50s. So, and that's coming from somebody who the damage was done. Like she had osteoporosis.
Severe osteoporosis.
Yeah, and she was able to turn it around and make it much better in 20 years later.
Yep. And she moved herself along from sickness marching back towards wellness, you know, and that's a hard grind at that age, but it's doable with just the right choices and consistency. Lift weights, eat meat, show up at the gym, have fun, high five your friends, try hard, move well. It works.
The stuff we talk about.
Guaranteed. It works every time. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. So you know what our 5-year plan is? We're going to keep doing what works. And I'm going to see if my bones are stronger in 5 years.
Okay.
We'll see what happens.
Set a remind me for 5 years from now.
5 years, check on my bones.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's about that.
Have a good one. See
Thanks,
you in the
guys.
next one.